The long-awaited Napoleon, starring Joaquin Phoenix and directed by Ridley Scott, is finally out in theaters. Just now getting back from the theater and having a little bit of time to gather my thoughts. I gotta be honest, I was a little disappointed. Ridley Scott is responsible for some of the greatest films to ever grace the screens. And coming off of his underrated historical epic from a couple years ago, The Last Duel, it seemed like this film had everything going for it to become an all-time great historical classic. But sadly, there's a lot of missed opportunities that this film doesn't explore and some other things that I just didn't like. But before I get into why I was ultimately disappointed with Napoleon, I feel like I have to briefly talk about the things that this film does well, because there certainly is a lot of things that it does do well. Pretty much everything that you'd expect from a high-budget film like this, such as good cinematography, good action, solid visual spectacles, are all present here, and it's done fantastically. Right from the very opening scene, Ridley Scott does a very good job at dropping us right into the chaotic setting of the French Revolution, and it's able to keep that tone that it sets right from the very beginning throughout. One of the standouts of this film from a technical perspective is the battles that they do choose to depict are all so cinematically beautiful. Ridley Scott finds a really good balance, in my opinion, of handheld shaky camera shots and what I like to call painting-like shots, which is really hard to do because it's really easy for a filmmaker to lean too heavily into one of those two, and it doesn't always work. But Ridley is able to show us the utter brutality of some of these battles while also making them look cinematically gorgeous, which is one of the best aspects of the film for me. There's also a gray overtone in the color grading throughout the film that I noticed, which I thought really helped put me into this historical time period. In terms of the performances, all the acting was good, but the only two standouts for me were Joaquin Phoenix as Napoleon and Vanessa Kirby as Josephine. I'm not a historical expert, so I couldn't tell you from that perspective whether Joaquin Phoenix's performance is historically accurate, but I certainly bought into his performance from the very beginning. Joaquin Phoenix as an actor is such a phenomenal screen presence, and any issues that I have with Napoleon as a character in this film don't stem from the acting, it's from the writing. Joaquin Phoenix does an incredible job with what he has to work with and what was asked of him from the director. Vanessa Kirby as Josephine was also pretty solid. She plays off of Napoleon very well, in my opinion, and the heart of this film, for better or for worse, lies in the character dynamic between the two of them. Any sort of depth that they try to give Napoleon is through Josephine, so as a result, she feels very integral to the story that they told. I also like that the film tries to give us most of the major events in Napoleon's life, but the reason why this movie was so disappointing for me is because it doesn't go deeper than just the surface. There's some pretty major questions about Napoleon which I thought would have been a given for this story to explore, but it just doesn't. For example, why do the people of France love him so much? Why do his soldiers love him so much? And the most obvious one being, what exactly makes Napoleon tick? For the pretty long runtime that this film has, it never finds the time to explore what's going on in Napoleon's mind and why he is the way that he is. Sure, the film does a pretty good job showing his pretty weird nature around women and his obsession with his wife, but why does Napoleon want to conquer Europe? What exactly makes him one of the greatest military geniuses of all time? The film just doesn't explore these things at all. Speaking of the military aspect, while the battles I thought were pretty well done and certainly a visual spectacle, there are some huge missed opportunities. While the film does a really good job at giving the audience a good sense of the geography of the battles, and we can clearly see what is unfolding, we don't really know why Napoleon is making the tactical decisions that he's making. Sure, we see the outcome of it all, so we can come to the logical conclusion that that was the smart thing to do, but I really wish the film would have explored the preparation process that Napoleon went through before these battles, and give us an understanding as to why the decisions that he was making were so genius. I think it would have just given those battles an extra lasting impact that I thought was lacking to a degree. Another weird thing about the battles for me, which I feel like I should mention, is for some reason, whenever a battle is concluded, it doesn't really feel like a major plot point to the story for some reason. It just kind of gets glossed over and the film moves on. Whenever Napoleon wins, it's kind of just like, oh, he won, on to the next thing. And whenever he loses, oh, he lost, on to the next thing. I'm not sure if I'm the only one that got that sense, but it felt a little off to me. This film also struggles with some major pacing issues. It's a little funny because it's kind of a mix of both extremes. Sometimes it feels like it really drags, and other times it's just flying. There are times where it's just cutting from year, to major event, like the snap of a finger. And then it stops on a scene, lingers for a while, and it's not like the scene that it's focusing on feels all that particularly important to the story at large, and it's really odd that they chose to do that. Perhaps the reason that might be the case is because the film is trying to cover almost the entirety of Napoleon's life, and at the same time it has to find time to try to get us to connect with these characters, which really leads into another major issue, which is they try to give us a movie showing almost the entirety of Napoleon's life, but it just does not have the time necessary to do that convincingly. There is too much to Napoleon's life that spans over the course course of decades, and you just can't do it in 2.5 hours. And as a result, the film feels like a bunch of mini chapters or summaries of a bunch of different events. Word on the street from what I'm hearing is there's actually a 4-hour director's cut of this film that Ridley Scott is going to release in the coming months, and I'll almost certainly be eager to see that, because I bet it's a lot better than what we got because it has more time to explore everything in depth. If I had the ultimate choice, I personally would have just made this into a high-budget miniseries, similar to the John Adams series. That series was so good and was able to do an in-depth analysis of John Adams as a man and his entire professional career because it had the proper time to do it. It's pretty much just 8 mini-movies, and I think that the story they were trying to tell with this film could have largely benefited from that format. And with that pretty much covers all the thoughts I have coming out of the theater. I know I'm pointing out a lot of flaws with the film, but I don't think it was bad. It was certainly an enjoyable historical film, and if you aren't super into that era of history or the man that was Napoleon, you'll probably be pretty satisfied, but I just really wanted this film to be epic. I was looking forward to it for a while, and sadly, it just doesn't quite reach that level for me. It's a pretty average 6 out of 10, and it's a shame because this had everything going for it, but it just misses in some really key areas which bring it down. Well, that's gonna do it for this video, guys. If you made it this far and you enjoy this type of content, do me a favor by leaving a like and hitting that subscribe button. If you want to be notified about when I post my next video, hit that notification bell. But anyways, that's all I got for today. I'll see you guys next time.